I remember there used to be a guy, because I play in bands, and there used to be a guy who did sound for us. And I remember he used to only eat meat, but he was always looked really sick. And I remember we used to always hammer him. It's like you gotta eat some vegetables as well. You just eat steak all the time. But looking back, I think his mistake. He probably would have been okay, but he always had a can of Coke with it. Yeah.
James, how did you find carnivore?
Yep. So I came to carnivore through keto. So if we go back to um, COVID, I was listening to a fellow called Ivor Cummings, who he was a commentator, sort of, you know, discussing different COVID stats and things. And one of the things he used to talk about was was the fact that metabolic health was a great determiner for outcomes with COVID. Um, in other words, people with poor metabolic health had a poor outcome with COVID, and one of his criticisms of the approach that was taken was that all emphasis was on, masks and getting vaccinated, and there was no public messaging about, what we talk about, which is it's how easy it is to reverse in order to wind back poor metabolic health, how quickly it can be done, and that option's there should you, you know, choose to take that. So I eventually bought his book. He's got a great book called Eat Rich, Live Long, and I bought the book, read it, and then I launched straight into keto. This is 2020, and yeah, it did really well. I lost 5 or 6 kilos. I was never really heavy, but fairly. I was probably, I'd say, overweight, but not huge. And so I lost a bit of weight and felt a hell of a lot better doing that. And I continued with that for, I guess, a couple of years until I became carnivore. But the carnivore I'd heard about, but I think the first person I heard about was Paul Saladino. He was talking about it, and he was sort of pretty radical. He was chopping up organs and testicles and lots of different interesting parts. Sort of, I think they call it nose to tail. So that didn't really appeal to me much, and I just saw that as a bit extreme and didn't really watch some of his stuff, but didn't really think much of it. And then about 6 months ago, I noticed that my weight was creeping up again, and that I was getting pretty slack with the keto. The carbs were creeping back in, and I thought, well, look, I trimmed my diet down to the point where I was eating basically steak and broccoli, like just greens. And I figured you got to have some greens because I don't know, we're conditioned for that. And then I think I must have run into Anthony Chafee. I think he talks about plants are trying to kill you. And I watched it. I watched some of his videos, and I realized, wow, because like I I don't think anybody enjoys broccoli. Like, but I realized that I didn't have to eat that, so I just dropped the broccoli, and I just sort of naturally fell into carnivore from restricting my carbs. But one of the main reasons that I basically stopped all the carbs was my carb addiction. So sometimes you don't realize when you're in it that you are addicted to carbs. And what would happen with the keto is the carbs would creep. I'd have pizza or some cookies or a muesli bar and little cheat days and think, I deserve this. And it got worse and worse, and my weight was creeping up. And I realized that I was addicted to the carbs and I couldn't stop. So I just thought this would be good, just put a stop to all the carbs. So I stopped all of them. And interestingly, when that happened, when I did that, and this wasn't my intention, but I stopped alcohol as well too. I wasn't like a massive drinker, but I drank a bit of wine. I like red wine. And I think it was about a week into just eating meat, I was out having a drink, and it just didn't taste good. It was really interesting. Just didn't. I had a couple of drinks, didn't taste good, and it didn't make me feel good. And I just sort of put it down, finished my glass, and just I haven't picked up another glass since then. So that was really interesting because I had no intention to stop drinking, but I just did. It just sort of happened, and I haven't had any desire to drink since then.
And so this was 2023 when you dropped the veggies and you or dropped all carbs and also stopped the alcohol?
Yeah. This is about 6 months ago. Yeah. So it's probably, I think it's 6 months on Carnivore. But immediately there was quite a few drastic changes I noticed when I stopped. First thing, besides the alcohol, was I had sciatica. I had back pain running down my legs and up the back, and it had been getting worse over the year. And I sort of see a chiropractor who's been sort of adjusting me, staying on top of it. But the treatment had stopped working, and it seemed to be getting worse. And that went away after a week of dropping the carbs, like totally resolved, hasn't come back. And also some elbow pain and other joint pain that I had. Energy levels shot through the roof. But I think, sort of looking back now with a little bit of time, what seems to happen is I notice, look, I've done every diet under the sun. I've done juicing, I've been vegetarian. I'm in health, so I'm always exploring different ways to improve my health and seeing what these different diets, what sort of effect. So that I always find whenever I try something new, I always have a little bit of a honeymoon period. And I think this is the greatest thing in the world. And I go around preaching to everybody, you got to eat this way. This is the way, I've found the Holy Grail. And that is no different with Carnivore, but there were actually substantial effects with that joint pain going away, energy levels improving, and a few other things. But then that sort of tends to settle down. And what I have noticed after 6 months now is more long-term things starting to resolve. I took a little bit of a time for the body to become fat adapted. So there was a few sort of issues with that. But 6 months down the track, I find the joint pain hasn't come back. I've put on an incredible amount of muscle. My body has gone, it's sort of found a weight, and it just stays there now. And I'm pretty much the same weight I was in my 20s now. But I'm actually finding it quite easy to put on muscle. I feel like my testosterone has increased because I had, just a bit of background, before I went Carnivore, I'd been to the doctor because I'd been having a few health issues, problems with my libido, blood pressure. And looking back now, I realized that it was probably caused by insulin, high insulin in the body. So all of those things are resolved. My blood pressure's perfect now. Libido's fine. Um, as I said, no pain. There's a few other things. Skin looks better. Um, energy levels. And interestingly, like I was just thinking the other day, I can't remember being hungry. You probably know this feeling, that that feeling of being hungry when when it's like an emergency. I've got to eat. Hasn't happened for a
That
long
kind of
time.
carb hunger.
Yeah, just
Hmm.
I've got to eat something. I just don't feel hungry anymore. I look forward to having a steak. I and I enjoy the steak when I have it, or eggs, whatever I'm eating. But if I can't have it, it doesn't bother me. I can wait till later or tomorrow or whatever. But I haven't felt hungry for months. It's really, I try to explain to people. I don't think they believe me.
So you're just pegged as the crazy person, right? Or he's going to sell me something now. Yeah.
Yeah, I
It's,
am seen as the crazy person. Especially the friends I work with and stuff. But they're used to me. I'm always crazy. I'm always the radical one doing strange stuff. But I think you lead by example, and a lot of people, they see the benefit that you get from it. So a lot of my friends are now trying it. They're dabbling in it, and at least they're cutting their carbs down and heading in that direction. I think it's too much of a jump for a lot of people to go from eating the standard diet to going carnivore. It would have been for me because it just seemed outrageous, but it just seems normal now. It seems like the normal way that humans should eat.
firstly, let me say congratulations on all those improvements, especially the sciatica. Um, did you? So you don't have to go to was it the chiropractor anymore for that?
No,
Did
no,
he contact
no,
you and say, "Hey, why are you not coming to your appointments anymore?"
no. He's a mate of mine anyway because I'm an acupuncturist, so he's kind of next door to me. We treat each other, so I've told him what I've done, and he thinks it's a bit, you know, um, outrageous. But he's all right. He's a good mate, so
Well,
that's
yeah, I
that's
mean,
fine.
that's a good point. What is he surprised? Is he like, I've never heard of this kind of healing before?
Yeah, yeah. I think he's a bit skeptical, but I probably would be too if I hadn't heard of it. If somebody said you just eat meat, I remember there used to be a guy because I play in bands, and there used to be a guy who did sound for us, and I remember he used to only eat meat, but he was always looked really sick. And I remember we used to always hammer him. It's like you gotta eat some vegetables as well. You just eat steak all the time. But looking back, I think his mistake. He probably would have been okay, but he always had a can of Coke with it. Yeah. So I think that's what let him down. So I always had this strange idea in my head of just eating meat because of him. But I think if he had have just left the can of Coke, he would have been okay.
Yeah. So, how are you eating now?
Um, I'm pretty sort of. I've got a pretty stable routine with how I eat. I've just recently decided because I'm spending a lot of money. I've got really good tastes in meat, so I go and I've been like buying the best cuts. I get the premium cuts. And I've just in the last week or so, I've thought I'm going to have to start experimenting with some cheaper meat because it's costing me a fortune. I'm spending $40, $50 a day buying really good meat. I love it. It tastes great, but maybe I'll just have to have it a few times a week. So I've just been experimenting with some cheaper cuts and some ground mints. I don't like the ground mints as much. I've been spoiling myself. So, but you know, experimenting with some cheaper cuts and eating more eggs. So I'll buy like a dozen eggs and eat most of them a day, have a couple of steaks. And interestingly, I'm just trying to up what I eat. I think we can, because we don't feel hungry, it's we can fall into the trap of not eating enough for the body. And I felt like at some stage I was getting almost too thin. People were worried about me. They thought I had cancer or something. They go, "Are you okay? You sick?" It's like, no, I just lost a lot of weight. So I've been purposely sort of upping what I eat, because Anthony Chaffee talks about eating until the meat doesn't taste good. So I started, and I realized you can eat a lot before it stops tasting good. So yeah, I'm just trying to work out ways to eat a lot, but sort of not send myself broke.
Oh. And so like you're doing that twice a day?
Yep, twice a day. So I got a pretty stable routine. I get up in the morning, and I've just got some weights, and I do that and I do qigong as well too, which is a Chinese sort of exercise. Do some qigong, I do some weights, and then I sprint, which I've 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 got from Sean O'Mara, Dr. Sean O'Mara. Have you heard of him? He he's so enthusiastic that he got me into the sprinting. So I've been doing the sprinting for about 4 months now. So I do some weights, go sprinting, and I do all that, and then I sort of eat my first meal about 12 or 1 o'clock after I've done all that and had a shower and stuff, and I do that. Then I'll go off and work for a few hours or whatever, and I'll have another meal later, depending on when I finish work. Just 2 meals a day. Don't snack. Don't feel the need to snack or to have anything else in between. So yeah, it's pretty stable. As I said, I've been trying to up my calories just to, because I'm working out so much as well too, just to help put on a bit of muscle.
So I've never heard of qigong before. Could you tell us a little bit about qigong?
Yep. So qigong, I was about 15 years ago. I was in a guitar shop, and there's a guy in the guitar shop looking at guitars, and you know how sometimes you're attracted to somebody's energy. Somebody they have something about them or whatever. And this guy, he had a really good energy about him, and I just wanted to go and chat to him, and I just started chatting to him. I go, "Mate, how you doing? What's your story? What's going on? What do you do?" And he said, "I do qigong. I get up 5 o'clock every morning. I stand outside in the backyard, and I do this exercise, and it's just fantastic." And I thought, wow, it sounds great. Like, he was raving about it. And I said, "Could I get your number? Maybe, you know, have a chat to you about it one day." And at this time, as I was, as I said, this is about 15 years ago, and I was still smoking back then. Being a musician, partying, doing a lot of things, destroying sort of the health of the body in it. And I was just trying. The main thing is I couldn't give up cigarettes, right? And I found that really difficult. So I ended up eventually calling this guy, and he got me started doing this exercise. It's the oldest known exercise in the world, apparently. Anyway, it's thousands of years old, and it's the proper name for it is zhang, which means standing like a tree. So hold this position, you stand and hold it for about 20 minutes, half an hour, and it energetically it cleans you out. It's a very powerful sort of form of meditation, standing meditation. So I began doing that 15 years ago and got incredible benefit from it. And I still do it to this day. And that's what led me down the path of eventually becoming an acupuncturist, because I discovered, have you heard of Qi? Or you're in
Mm.
Japan, maybe it's Ki,
Yeah. Yeah.
Genki desu ka? Yeah. So Ki is your vital life force. So what you're doing with qigong is qi is ki, energy, and gong means work. So it's energy work. So it clears out all those energetic pathways through the body. I guess um, since I've been young, I've always been a kind of seeker. And I'm always looking for new information, ways to improve yourself physically, mentally, spiritually. And the qigong was a big part of that. The different sort of diets I've tried are also a part of that. And it's interesting. I wouldn't have thought I would have ended up on this path of eating only meat, considering what I've done, because we all get told, especially spiritually, that we need to eat sattvic foods, which are, no animal products, very light foods. And I tried all of that, and it didn't work for me. I tried the vegetarian diet for a while, and I just got fat, and because I was eating so much junk. Because it's so hard. Like, what do you eat when you're eating? I don't know. I didn't know what to eat. So a lot of the time I was eating potato chips and other stuff, and not really good stuff. And it's interesting. I was, after a year of being vegetarian, I was I was at, you're Australian, Bunnings. Bunnings, I was at, which is like a big hardware retail place, but they have the sausage sizzle out the front on the weekends, and I was there with my son, and I walked out and smelt the sausages. Oh, geez, that smells good. And I said to my son, I go, "Do you want a sausage, mate?" He goes, "Yeah, I'll have a sausage." So I walked up and I go, "Two sausages," and I had a sausage, and that was the end of my experiment with vegetarianism. But I found energetically eating this way has made me feel spiritually, mentally, and that a lot more clearer than any of the other diets had. Besides the vegetarian diet, I read a lot of other diet books talking about the standard sort of food pyramid, and I ate porridge for breakfast for a long time. I'd have porridge with honey um, and a banana. And I thought that was so healthy doing that, because I was going from eating wheat bix and that, and I thought I was doing, being really good. And and pasta with the kind of tomato Napoleon sauce, and I thought I was being so good, and I was eating all of that stuff, and I got really fat. Not really fat, but I got bigger. I'm a fairly small bone person, so I can put on a bit of weight without looking too big. But I I started getting bigger and bigger, and then I started upping my exercise, running more, and I still kept putting on weight. I thought, what's going on? I'm eating all the right things. Got my porridge, my good pasta, really nice, good quality bread and stuff I was eating with it. So I was shocked to learn eventually, when I read Ivor Cummins' book, that, you know once once you once you learn about insulin, that's the key. And there's it's like, I don't know, taking the red pill. You can't go back.
Uh,
Yeah.
what you've just described is, this is the thing that everyone across you're in Melbourne, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so everyone across Melbourne or any major city in the world, everyone's cooking stuff like pasta and they're putting in their creamy sauces and all that. And because of
Yeah.
marketing, they think this is healthy, you know?
Yeah.
Come and sit down and eat your pasta before you have your dessert. You're not having any dessert until you eat your pasta. And it's like, it's just sugar upon sugar upon sugar upon seed oils, you know?
And Melbourne specifically has got quite a food culture, and everybody likes to watch MasterChef and all the other different, so we're food obsessed in Melbourne, and food is a major part of life. It's entertainment for people. They like to watch people cook, they like to eat, they like to taste different things. And what I've noticed now, since I've dropped the carbs, and I've dropped the carb addiction has totally gone now. Like, I don't crave any carbs, is that I no longer think of food as entertainment. Like, let's go out for dinner. I want to try this. I wonder what this tastes like. And it really, I have no interest. I don't think of food at all until it's time to eat. And then I'm sure you must have a lot of people say, don't you get sick of eating steak every day? Don't you get
Yeah,
tired of it? But you
yeah.
don't. You actually, I look forward. I have no desire to eat anything else anymore.
Mm.
And I find that astonishing. But all that really points to is the fact that it must be our proper diet, because I'm sure cows only want to eat grass or I don't know. Like, animals like to eat their food, and if I had to eat, pizza every day, I'd probably, really get sick of that eventually. Or if I had to eat rice or some other food, but I don't seem to, I don't seem to get sick of steak at all. I have no desire to go out to restaurants anymore. In fact, I'm normally disappointed if I go out to a restaurant because they don't normally cook a steak as good as I cook it myself now. But either the cuts are
Um,
too lean or it's overcooked, or I don't know, too many
mm.
spices or something on it.
So what like how do you cook your steak? Is it just you put it in the frying pan or do you have a barbecue outside or have you got an air fryer or something?
Yeah, interesting question, because I just cook it in a frying pan for now. But I've been a friend of mine who he's actually one of my clients, and he's a steak connoisseur. And he showed me the other day. He bought, speaking of Bunnings, he bought from Bunnings. It's a 1500-watt steak searer, and it cooks a steak and sears a steak in like 2 minutes. I can't remember the name of it, but it sort of goes up, and this thing is sears the steak and it cooks. He reckons it's the best thing he's ever had. So I'm going to try one of those. You've got to get a gas bottle on that with it, but it can sear a steak in something like 2 minutes and cook it perfectly. So I'm thinking of getting one of those, or possibly an air fryer. What do you do yourself?
If I'm cooking a steak, I've got no space in Japan, so I just fry it up. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, no bench space, no outdoor space. So yeah.
Is it difficult procuring, like, getting steak in Japan? Because I've traveled to Japan quite a bit, and I'd imagine that it wouldn't be like getting. Is it expensive to buy steak there?
It's expensive. Like meat is generally expensive here, but I mean, it's easy to find. It's easy to get because uh, they eat a lot of meat here. I mean, it is very rice based and plant based kind of diet, but they do eat a lot of meat. That's why
Yakiniku.
the yeah, right? Yakiniku.
Yeah.
And and you go to yakiniku or a barbecue restaurant and you're eating all kinds of meat, including liver and everything.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
But it's the same with, they talk about the blue zones like Okinawa. Like
Yeah,
Okinawa eat meat like it's going out of fashion.
yeah.
It's yeah, they're not. I mean, they eat plants, but they're not predominantly plant eaters.
Okay, yeah. I just come back from Singapore. I was in Singapore over New Year's, and that nearly sent me broke trying to eat steak. I was paying $70 or $80 a steak. Luckily, it was only for a week, but yeah, I imagine it'd be, in Australia we have beef with, we have a lot of beef. One thing I have tried, because I travel quite a bit, and what I did in Singapore as well too, if I travel, just to keep my expenses down, is I just go to McDonald's and just order their patties, their beef patties. You can eat a pound of patties for $15 or something like that. And I researched, I looked into their meat because and it in Australia it's grass fed, 100% Aussie beef, nothing added except for salt and pepper. So the McDonald's patties are. I think I got that hack off the Ken Berry, all these carnivores. He talked about it, and I tried it, and it's great. And if you're traveling, that's a good hack
Yeah, it
to have.
really is. And as an ex McDonald's Australia kitchen hand, when I was 15
Yeah,
years old, I can say they don't use canola oil or anything like that when they're cooking on the grill. The
no,
the meat cooks
they're
in its own
broiled.
fat. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think they
Uh,
broil them or something. So and also because if you order five of them, they don't have them ready to go, so they've got to cook them up fresh for you normally. So you get them, they're fresh, and they're 80% fat or something. So they're very they're very satiating.
yeah. Yeah, so that's all when I'm walking home at night from work and I'm like, "Oh, I'm a little bit peckish." There's so many McDonald's on the way home. I'm just like, "I'll just go and have a few patties and I'll be right." And the great
Yeah,
thing is because there is so much fat in them, they just keep you satiated forever.
I had a great idea. Remember a few years ago that documentary Super Size Me, and the guy went and he ate McDonald's for a month, and he ended up getting really sick, getting diabetic or something, and like it destroyed his health. I thought of doing like a carnivore one where so you only eat McDonald's for a month, but you just eat the patties and get somebody who's overweight, diabetes, see if you can reverse all their health problems by eating McDonald's just for a month, but just the
That would
patties.
be that would be an awesome, awesome little documentary. I reckon that'd do really well. Like,
Yeah.
you know, untyped to me or something like that. So,
Yeah.
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 Oh, nice. So, um, can you talk a little bit about your band and when you are traveling with the band? I mean, you're eating at McDonald's, but is it difficult? Are you in remote locations sometimes?
Uh, yeah. Look, it's always pretty easy to get a steak. So I eat a lot of McDonald's now just to keep the just my budget down. But what I found you can do if you go to a restaurant, look, I walk into a restaurant and I just ask them straight out. I go, look, I have this special dietary requirement. It's for health reasons, but I just can't eat these sort of foods. All I can eat is meat. Can you look after me? And normally they'll go, yes. And I go, okay, so if I order the steak, instead of having all these sides with it, can you give me like an egg and some bacon as a side? Because normally the steak, if you go to a restaurant, the steaks are a lot smaller, and it's just sometimes it's just not enough. You need other stuff with it as well. So often you can, if you sort of upfront with them and tell them, and then they'll go and sort of ask the chef and come back, go, yep, that's all right, we can do something for you. Because after all, you're the customer. And so often they'll give you a side of bacon, some eggs instead of the chips and salad and the other stuff they give you. So I found that works well as long as you kind of do it before you sit down. Because once you're sitting down and they walk over and you've looked at the menu, they're not as eager. But if you walk into the restaurant and go, look, I'm looking for a meal. This is my story. Can you help me? They'll tend to go. They'll go and ask someone, come back, go, yep, you have a seat. We'll look after you. So I do that. I'll get a few sides of bacon, a couple of eggs or something like that with the steak as well too.
Oh,
And
nice.
because otherwise you're paying, like it's average of $50 or something for a steak in a restaurant in Australia now. Prices have gone up. And if you're just getting only the steak, it's not good value, if you're losing all your sides. So that's a good way to do it.
Yeah, you're making me think about I went to Parramatta in October. I was there
Yeah,
for almost a week, and I enjoyed the steak so much that I just ended up eating 2 steaks a day. And,
yeah.
the I guess because it's inner Sydney, the prices were pretty high. So, it was like
And
$90
sometimes,
for lunch, $90 for dinner.
yeah, it does. It can break your bank. And a lot of the times you're paying that much money and they're not really good steaks either.
Mm.
I find in the restaurants, they tend to not be fatty enough. They're giving people, maybe they want leaner cuts or whatever. So if there's no fat in it, it's tasteless to me. If you get those really lean cuts, it's just not really that delicious.
Yeah. So, what does the future hold for you as far as eating and goals with maybe carnivore or working out or that kind of thing?
Yeah, look, I think I just stay on track with what I'm doing. As I said, when I first started eating this way, same as when I first started keto, you get a lot of immediate benefits. And I call that sort of the honeymoon period where, like this is the greatest thing. And then you sort of settle down, it just becomes sort of a normal way of eating. But the real benefits come with time. So I'm at 6 months now. I'm looking, how else can my health improve? Um, mood wise, also your mental health and things like that. And just seeing over time, I want to give it a couple of years. I don't think you can go back to eating the way you used to eat now, eating processed junk food. And I used to eat a lot of it because I travel a lot with the band, your roadhouses and airports and eating a lot of sugar, a lot of junk. And I don't think I could go back to eating that way. Something drastic would have to happen for that to happen. Um, yeah, I think
You,
I'll eat this way forever now.
mm, you just made me think about something there when you said like you can't go back. I mean, I feel the same way as well. But when you're talking about like you're traveling a lot and e eating carbs, eating processed, carbohydrate-based diet, it really reminds me of, when the iPhones kind of first came out, when it was iPhone 3, 4, 5, and
Yeah,
everyone was so upset because the battery didn't last for very long at all. And everyone's when they're out, they're always like they've gotta have, like, all these extra battery packs with them to plug it in to
yeah,
make sure that they can, as soon as they get to a friend's house, it's like, "Can I charge my phone?" And, like, that's what it's like with when you're eating a regular diet, it's like
yeah,
everywhere you go, it's like, "Okay, can I have some carbs now? Can I have some carbs now?"
yeah. And that's look, and you turn into a bit of a preacher about this, and you try because you see other people struggling
Mm.
with their diets and with their weight and stuff. You go, just try it, but I think it's too radical for most people to jump into. I've had a few of my friends try it and they like it, but I think they sort of I really believe that for many of us, we've just got to totally cut out the carbs. Like just doing the keto is not enough because of that addiction. It's like, like if you're an alcoholic, you can't have a glass of wine. Just have half a glass of a night because you can't. One drink's never enough, and you know, and it's the same with the carbs. And I kept creeping back and eating more and more carbs. So I think it's good in that respect. It's actually good to be free of all that sort of stuff now. I can even walk into a cafe or a bakery and see all those pastries and cakes and things like that, and I don't even recognize it as food uh, now, which is I find really interesting because I used to love all that stuff.
Yeah, you're right. You can walk in, it doesn't really it's not really like food. It's not hitting any of your senses, like the smells or the appearance, or it's just like, okay, that looks kind of like plastic. It's like in Japan, they have the wax models of the food outside restaurants. It's a little bit like that, you know?
Yeah,
And it's just I'll have my coffee or whatever in the place, and then that's good enough for me.
many years ago, I went to Argentina with the band Buenos Aires. And have you ever been to an Argentinian steakhouse? That they have. We went to this Argent because they have some of the best meat. Even in Buenos Aires at the airport, you can buy meat at the airport and take like they have a butcher at the airport. It's crazy. But we went to an Argentinian steakhouse when we were there. They have a big cow in the window, and you go in and you order your steak, and all the sides are meat as well too. They have no vegetables, no chips, nothing. Everything's meat. So you order your steak, and then they bring out some sausages and bits of lamb and things like that that you have. Maybe that was foreshadowing something, but that was one of my greatest experiences eating there. Just the steaks in South America were just, and this is before I was carnivore or any of this stuff. I just happened to be there, but I've always remembered it. And there's a couple of good Argentinian steakhouses in Melbourne that I visit sometimes as well too.
Yes. Sounds like carnivore utopia. It's
It is, yeah.
yeah, nice. So, is there any way people can reach out to you, James? Do you have a YouTube or an Instagram or anything?
I don't really do social media much, but the best way is probably I've just got a website for my business, which is pascavalacupuncture.com.au, and I've got a little clinic there, and I do that during the week. Um, the band I play in is called Bjorn Again. So we've got a website as well, bjornagain.com.au. That's BJORN, as in Bjorn.
You guys have been around for years, right?
Yeah,
Bjorn
yeah.
again.
So Bjorn Again was the first. I know there's probably hundreds of ABBA tribute bands around now, but Bjorn Again was the first. We started 80, I think it was 88, and so we're the original one, and I think the best. And still, 30 odd years later, we're still going really strong. So it's good fun.
Well, James, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story with us today. I really appreciate your time.
And my pleasure.